Let's get perspective on this. Raymond Vickery is the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade Development. He's joining us along with Arnab Das, the Global Macro Strategist for EMEA at Invesco. Gentlemen, thanks for making the time and joining us on India Tonight. Raymond Vickery, to you first. Do you think this is simply warmongering, or do you think that Biden and Israel could strike Iranian oil reserves for real?
Well, let's make it clear that war is not good for anybody, either civilians, military, economic, and the object of the United States has been to try to restrain Israel while at the same time recognizing their right to self-defense. The militaries of the United States and Israel are in constant contact, and they are talking about this question of retaliation for the Iranian missile strikes on Israel as we speak. One hopes that those conversations are headed toward restraint rather than all-out war. You've rightly pointed that the market for oil, the price has gone up, not as much as you might expect because the United States, Brazil, and others are pumping so much oil these days. Right now, the United States, the Biden administration is caught really between a rock and a hard place. One, wanting to support Israel's right of self-defense, but at the same time, urging restraint and trying to keep away from a war which will be disastrous if it becomes generalized. I have every hope that the response which is going to be made, and I think there will be a response, will be proportionate and will not lead to all-out war. That's certainly, I believe, the object of the Biden administration in the United States at this time.
Well, that's the hope, Mr. Vickery. But Arnab Das, Biden said in the past that he would not support Israeli strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. But now with this off-the-cuff remark that we are talking about, oil prices have reacted some more on the upside, a 5% uptick after that remark came through. In fact, oil prices have gone up by 10 odd percentage points since Iran's missile attack on Israel. So how much further do you see oil prices rising if this conflict does escalate?
Well, I think if we have attacks on Iranian oil facilities, it'll clearly make another significant round of increases in the oil price. But I would agree with what Mr. Vickery just said. Right, you might have expected a significantly higher impact from all of this geopolitical risk becoming more material, more present. And I think it's both that the U.S. and Brazil are pumping a lot of oil. The U.S. is, energy independent and is a net energy exporter now. So that's a very important difference from the past. I would also say, I think, Saudi Arabia, very interestingly, in terms of timing, maybe it's a coincidence. I'm not a fan of conspiracy theories, but it's interesting that Saudi Arabia effectively abandoned its $100 oil price target in the week before the escalation. And of course, it is the case that Russia is pumping and exporting oil despite the sanctions of the U.S. and the West, particularly to China and Russia. So I think there are a lot of things going on that are, constraining the full impact based on history that you would expect from these kinds of geopolitical ructions in the oil market. And, furthermore, the oil market is more segmented than it has been in the past. Of course, there have been sanctions on Iranian oil for a long time, and there are constraints on Russia's exports, but the exports of both countries are being diverted to East Asia, right, and some to India, some to China. So there'll be maybe more of an effect in that direction from Iran than for the world as a whole. Right, and also for the U.S. So I suppose that's one of the factors that may be, easing the constraints on or the concerns of the Biden administration when it comes to the world economy and U.S. economy impact of these decisions and negotiations.
Well, any kind of negotiation at this point in time is going to have an impact on the global economy. That's a given. In fact, the Indian Prime Minister was speaking at an event and he spoke about the need for global economic and energy security amidst these two ongoing wars. Just listen in for a moment to what he said.
इस बार का ये कॉन्क्लेव ऐसे समय में हो रहा है जब दुनिया के दो बड़े रीजन में युद्ध की स्थिति है। ये दोनों रीजन ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी के लिए और खास तौर पर एनर्जी सिक्योरिटी के लिहाज से बहुत अहम है। इतनी बड़ी ग्लोबल अनसर्टेनिटी के बीच हम सभी यहाँ द इंडियन एरा यानी भारत के युग की चर्चा कर रहे हैं। ये दिखाता है कि आज भारत पर विश्वास कुछ अलग ही है।
Mr. Vikri, the Indian Prime Minister was speaking in Hindi, but the major takeaway is the fact that global economic stability is an important piece. Energy security is an important piece for an emerging market which relies on oil imports, that much more. Now that we are seeing a rise in oil prices right now, it's definitely going to have an impact on equities globally. But at this point in time, when you look at the kind of energy security that a country like India needs to have, we have an ongoing war. The Russia-Ukraine conflict is ongoing. How differently is the current conflict in West Asia likely to impact energy security going ahead from here and the way oil prices are moving, according to you?
Well, the Prime Minister is quite right that the economic factors are intimately connected with the military and security factors. You know, there is this feeling among some that, well, we can have the politics and the military and security over here, and then on the other side, we can have economics, business, commercial relations. The fact is, there is only one reality. And the security of energy supply is absolutely essential. And that makes it all the more important for great democracies like the United States and India to work together. It is not the case that Iran and what happens in Iran is the final word in regard to the oil markets, has just been elucidated by your other guest. The fact is that the United States is independent at this time in terms of petroleum. The fact is that OPEC and particularly Saudi Arabia can really make up for deficits. But these approaches, which will provide the kind of security necessary in the energy market to support the security worldwide, can only come about by waging peace, as much as we do war, and that means that India and the United States need to be talking about this. They need to both be.
Then why is the political rhetoric going up a few notches, Mr. Vikri? Do you see a correlation between the U.S. presidential elections and what we are hearing from the White House vis-a-vis American assistance to Israel in this conflict with Iran?
Well, there's no question that there is a connection. One, there's a very strong APEC lobby, and it is very important in the United States. But more important than that, there is a widespread political commitment to Israel in the United States across the board, growing out of World War II and the Holocaust. So the politics are there. The politics of oil and the price of gasoline, of course, is very much there.
Yes.
But the question is, how do you navigate these very difficult waters?
Indeed.
And it seems to me that we have to keep our eye on the ball of working together
Yes.
to be able to provide peace and stability.
But also there is the fear that any escalation in the war right now would mean that there could be blockages, supply constraints, blockages in the Straits of Hormuz. The Straits of Hormuz is from where a third of oil tanker traffic passes and a fifth of LNG frozen gas passes. So energy supplies could get hit. Is that a valid concern for the markets, considering the impact of the Red Sea crisis that we've seen in recent times, Arnab Das?
Yeah, look, I think if it comes to that, it will be there will be a significantly greater challenge than what we've already seen. I think it's important to recognize, that said, that India is not, it's clear, as the Prime Minister is indicating, India doesn't have energy security as such, but India is in a much better position, I would say, to weather an important shock in the price of energy generally and oil in particular, much better than it's been in the past, right? Reserves are much higher. The current account deficit, especially for such a fast growth rate in India, is much smaller, largely because of the services export boom, not just because the price of oil was lower than in previous boom periods, right? So I think it is a very serious challenge and a very serious risk
Indeed.
that lies ahead. But I don't think I think the market is being restrained in its response because of all these various factors that suggest that things are being done, will be done, to insulate the world economy from the impact of these commodity shocks, from
Yes.
geopolitical
Yes.
tensions and outright conflict.
Indeed. Mr. Vikri, this year itself, we've seen the weak demand situation emerging from China, the more than adequate supply from Saudi Arabia we were talking about, and both these factors, those have kept oil prices down. But is the situation rapidly reversing where it could impact inflation rates across the world, something that central banks have been fighting since we got hit by the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Well, there's no question that the price of oil can have an effect on inflation and so many other aspects of the economy. And there is required constant vigilance in order to be able to insulate not only India, but the world from the kinds of shocks. But we are in a pretty good position right now. India is in a pretty good
But will it
position.
unravel
It's
the
not a
work that is
question.
being done by the central banks to control rising inflation now that this conflict is underway and we're looking at the prospect of an escalation?
Yes, but you have to look at the fact that the markets really haven't reacted extremely because of the factors that I've been talking about.
Yes,
And Arm has been talking about.
yes,
And
yes.
so that gives us some comfort.
Yes, indeed, it is some comfort that the markets aren't absolutely unraveling, even though strong rhetoric is emerging as far as this escalation in the conflict between Iran and Israel is concerned, and we'll keep watching it and seeing the kind of impact it has on global equities. Mr. Vikri, Arnab Das, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on this edition of India Tonight. Appreciate it.